So right now, one of the big topics in political discourse is what's going on with the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. And before we really get into this, I want to preface that neither me or TJ is like really super experienced in the history of this particular conflict, of the conflict in Yemen, of these rebels, and like so, like there's a lot we don't know here. But I wanted to just get on and talk about this from a much broader angle because I'm sure there's plenty of nuance that is escaping me. But one of the things that I'm seeing a lot that is particularly interesting to me, and I guess we'll do a little bit of a really brief rundown for the people who have not heard much about this conflict, is that essentially there has been an ongoing civil war in Yemen. You know, the Houthi rebels are a rebel group, and there's a lot of bad things that have happened in Yemen with involving the US and Saudi Arabia that like we don't even really need to get into right now. But what the Houthi rebels have been doing in the Red Sea is attacking cargo ships. And you know that they're pirates and they're definitely, you know, personally benefiting from this, but they are at least saying that they are doing this in response to Israel's attacks in Gaza and as a form of resistance against, you know, Western forces that are doing this terrible, awful thing. And what I'm seeing is a lot of, you know, both conservatives and liberals and even leftists talking about how, well, of course, the U.S. government is going to respond by attacking the Houthi rebels. One of the actual good things that our military does, and specifically our Navy, is maintain international shipping routes. And so, like, even a lot of people who disagree with the U.S.'s stance on Israel are like, oh no, well, they should attack the Houthi rebels. And there is a contingent of the left, you know, that definitely is probably led by like tankies and whatnot. But they're like, no, we should support the Houthi rebels because they are the only people who are actually fighting against the powers that be here for and being on the right side of history. And I think there's a lot of nuance to that conversation. So before I give what I think about it, I want to hear what you think, TJ. Are you with the like people on the left who are like, let's support the Houthi rebels? Are you with the people who are like, oh no, like they need to be shut down? These are you know, the shipping, the cargo ships have nothing to do with this conflict and don't deserve to be attacked. You know what? Where do you stand on this?
Well, so there's no universe in which the United States supports the Houthi rebels. Like that's
Yes.
like it's not even worth considering. Like there's no that's not gonna because the Houthi rebels, we've been like in a proxy war with them, you know, for a long time now. Because we've been selling weapons, I mean, multiple administrations to Saudi Arabia, who are, you know, fighting the Houthi rebels, because that's, you know, they're a proxy of Iran. So you know this has been going on a long time. So it's not surprising to me that the United States decided to go after them in this blockade and everything, because you know they've been antagonistic towards our great friends, the Saudis, for a long time. So now that they're going against our other buddies, the Israelis, yeah, of course it's going to happen. And it is just weird to look at like this from like a bird's eye view. Like if you just showed up on Earth and you just you're looking around and then you see this group of people who have no shot in hell of winning this conflict, but they're standing behind principle, taking on two of the top five militaries on Earth. Like if you were watching this movie, who would you be rooting for? Like
Yeah.
who? Like I mean, it's just like it's obvious you're rooting for Darth Vader. Like you are. It's like, oh, you know, this is the powerful military. They have the missiles and shit. And so, yeah, like I get why the Houthis did it, and I see, and you're right about the Navy. So in the military, there's a lot of, you know, interbranch squabbling and, you know, joking and shit like that. And so, of course, I think the Army is superior to the Navy, obviously being an Army vet. But look, I would always say, if we're going to talk about which branch is the most important, it's the Navy by far. The Navy is like a country mile ahead of everyone else when it comes to being the most important, because of exactly what you said about the fact that the United States Navy does secure shipping routes around the world. And this is just what the Navy does. I hate to admit it, but this is exactly what this is like one of the primary reasons it exists. And you don't gotta like it, like I don't, because like in principle, I agree with causing harm to shipments from the Israelis and everything like that. But I get it. I get it. And there is no other way this is going to happen. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw like a tweet recently. This isn't my thought, so I'm not taking credit for it, but I thought it was really interesting. And it said about how it's very weird that in our, patriotic propaganda, like our general image of the military, we don't really think about the Navy, Americans. Like we think about the Army, we think about the
Mhm.
Marines, we think about ground battles, people with guns, storming Normandy, all that shit. Which I guess is the Navy too. But like we think about the people storming the beach. We don't think about the people in the boats, you know?
Mhm.
And it's weird because if you look throughout history, you look at the British, like the Navy was their main military
Yeah.
branch. They were very proud of it. It was a point of national pride. And if you look at many isolated countries that like Britain, like Benotia, like that are on islands or whatever, the Navy is their main military branch. And you could make the same argument for America. We have two land borders. The Navy is very important to our military and is probably the most productive branch of it.
It's
In
not even
terms,
close. There's no
yeah,
probably about it. It absolutely is. Yeah.
and
So,
and absolutely, by the way, I don't know, maybe besides the Air Force has no fucking rival. There's if we had a ground war with China, it would be a battle, but if we had a naval battle with any country on earth, it wouldn't even be remarkably close. Um, it's just interesting that we view it that way, and I wonder why that is. But to go back to the point, um, you're right, and I think that this is something that I've discovered recently is that when my politics were much more liberal, when I was much more of a centrist, a lot of that was because I went through, okay, well, what is realistic,
mhm.
and then decided on what I thought was best from that position. And I think that that's what a lot of people are doing with this. It's like, okay, well, it's utterly unrealistic for the United States to not attack the Houthi rebels. Um, Obviously, they're going to do that. And since I think what the Houthi rebels are doing also, they're not good people. Even if they're on the right side of this conflict, I don't think they're good people, and I agree with
Mhm.
that. And by good people, I just mean like they do really fucked up shit too, you know. Um, that okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna say, yeah, America should bomb the Houthi rebels, right? And I'm not gonna lose sleep over it personally. But if I'm
Mhm.
going from what my like fucking if I really think about this from a philosophical position, where I come down on it, you're right. We're the empire. And I
Yeah.
think everyone on the left generally understands America is the empire. They are the, and yeah, the empire probably did do some good things in securing intergalactic trade routes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that is a thing. We don't get a movie about that because it's more
Yeah.
boring, but like, sure, you can make the same argument there. And like the argument I'm seeing being made is like, oh, well, if you're going to attack civilian ships, America has a duty to attack you. And I agree with that. But the thing that I think that people on the left who are supporting the rebels are getting flack over isn't the right thing. Like they're not going like, yeah, these are the good guys. We want them to win. They just want America to lose. Like
Yeah, that's the thing.
they're just like, well, if America has a duty to attack the rebels over this, Israel is doing that on a far larger scale, and America ain't attacking them. So like they can't pick and choose about this shit. They're on one side or the other, and they've clearly been on the side of Saudi Arabia and Israel and these powers that are far more evil than the Houthi rebels. But because they have this ingrained sense of state power and like gravitas to them, we don't view atrocities committed by state militaries in the same way that we do rebel groups. We just don't. And it's shocking, really, if you ever look at it from the pure philosophical perspective. But that's because so many people start from the status quo. They start from, oh, well, this is what's realistically going to happen. And I have to base my politics around that. And once I stopped doing that, I think it really got rid of a lot of the hypocritical conflicts within my philosophy because it doesn't make sense for America to bomb the Houthi rebels for this. They should, even if you agree with like the premise of they have to defend people who are being attacked by these groups because they are innocent, they should then also be attacking Israel. And they're not doing that. And like, you cannot hold both positions at once and have them be logically consistent, other than just saying, well, that's the way the world is and it's what we have to expect.
Yeah, yeah. It's not, I mean, this is the one of the hardest parts about growing up is that you realize that uh the actions of militaries and nations aren't built around morality. They aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So they're built on practicality, and yeah, or it's not built around consistency either. Because you're right. Yeah, it's like, okay, we are against people harming civilians. No, we're not. Like, no, no,
No.
no, we're not. We're not at all. Like, we're perfectly fine with that. And when you talked about how, so when a terror group kills a bunch of people, we call them evil, but when a state does it, we're fine. Well, that depends on the state, because if the
Mm-hmm.
state is our enemy, then it's bad. But if the state
Yeah.
is our ally, the Imperial Japan massacring people is an atrocity that is
Bad.
written down for
Mm-hmm.
generations. Bad. The Israelis do the Gazans. Well, that's necessary. I mean, it has to happen. And so,
Yeah,
like,
it's war. This happens
yeah,
in
of
war.
course. Yeah. Like, what do you want them to play cards over this shit? Yeah, like it's just eye rolling and everything. And what you were talking about with naval power and how important it is staggering to think about, because you mentioned Great Britain and how this tiny island, that had no business being the most powerful nation in the world for like 200 years, did so because of their navy. And just being in the military, like seeing like what navies are capable of, like, this is why like this story is just so not inconceivable, but it's like it's hard to grasp, which I guess is what inconceivable means. But is the fact that we're using the United States Navy to attack this group of rebels when like, the Israelis could take care of this themselves, but we're like, nope, nope, time to fire up the engines, let's go. Is, if you've ever seen like what naval artillery is capable of, it's astounding. We when I was deployed, we had talks with a Navy unit and an Air Force unit, and I would read about like the naval artillery. Like, they had like, I can't remember how, like, guns as big as a person, like larger than a person, and the shells they fired were like the size of a person, and you could hit targets from like miles away,
Mm-hmm.
from the goddamn ocean. Like, it, and the fact that they can carry planes. Like, Top Gun is not an Air Force movie. Top Gun is a Navy movie. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
carry planes on boats. Like, the power of the United States Navy is staggering. And seeing it, and that's why I gotta say, like, we mentioned how, did you ever play God of War? The God of
Yes.
War.
Not the
So,
most recent one, but every other one.
okay, well, that's too bad because I'm talking about that. So, how unfortunate. So in God of War, Kratos, Ragnarok, Kratos
Mhm.
is walking with his son Atreus, and they're talking about a battle that they fought in the previous game,
Mhm.
the God of War game. And they fought with like the elves. There was the dark elves and the light elves, and there was
Mhm.
a fight going on. And I think they fought with the dark elves, and they fought and they conquered the light elves, who were like evil. They were like using people's souls for energy and shit like that. And then they find out in this game that the king of the dark elves had like ulterior motives, and he was like using them or something.
Mhm.
And they're talking with the Norse god of war, Tyr. And Atreus hears the story and he says, wait a minute, Dad, are you saying we fought for the wrong side? And then Tyr says, that's not the right question. And he's like, well, what is the right question? And Kratos says, is there a right side? And he's like, exactly. I love that line so much, because so many times we look at these conflicts as like good people, bad people. It's not how the shit works. Not how it
Mhm.
works. You have people with different motives and different reasons for doing what they do, and our interests happen to converge with one and not the other. And we just happen to have, like the biggest guns, so we get to do what we want, and that's what we're seeing out here.